Welcome to The Explainer. I am so thrilled you're joining me today because honestly, we are breaking down a highly anticipated and, let's be real, pretty dense piece of policy. We're looking directly at the May 6, 2026 government resolution from Maharashtra regarding the implementation of the revised national pension scheme. If you're a state employee, this is literally the exact document that dictates your financial future. So we're going to unpack it piece by piece so you know exactly where you stand.
So I have to ask you directly, what does this huge wall of administrative text actually mean for your livelihood once you retire? It is super easy to get lost in all the bureaucratic jargon, right? But at its core, this document is the blueprint for your financial security. Our goal today is to strip away all that complex phrasing and show you exactly what is inside this revised scheme. All right, here's our roadmap for today. We'll be covering scheme and eligibility, pension math, family pension, mandatory transfers, and finally, conditions and exceptions. Let's just jump right in.
Section 1, Scheme and Eligibility.
Okay, let's dive into this timeline because it is absolutely crucial before we even start talking about the numbers. We need to establish who qualifies and the dates you really need to keep on your radar. The government actually made this scheme effective retroactively, starting March 1st, 2024. Then, the detailed guidelines dropped on May 6, 2026. But listen, the absolute most important date for you is December 31st, 2026. That is your hard deadline to submit your option form to your department head. If you miss this window, these new guidelines just won't apply to you.
Section 2, Pension Calculation Math. Moving into the actual math, the part everyone's been waiting for. The rules basically divide eligibility into two distinct tiers based on your specific years of service. First off, if you hit retirement with 20 or more years of service, boom, you receive the maximum designed benefit. But if you fall into the proportionate bracket, meaning you reach standard retirement age with fewer than 20 years, but at least 10 years of service, you're going to receive a prorated benefit based strictly on your exact length of service.
Now, what's really interesting about this is the guarantee it provides for that top tier. If you hit that 20-plus years of service milestone, this scheme guarantees a pension equal to exactly 50% of your last drawn pay. Plus, and this is a big plus, on top of that 50% base, you're also eligible for the applicable Dearness Allowance. It essentially creates a highly predictable, solid floor for your retirement income.
But you might be wondering, what if your last drawn pay wasn't very high? Or maybe you fall into that proportionate 10 to 20-year bracket. Well, the government has set up a safety net. The absolute minimum guaranteed pension for anyone retiring under the scheme with at least 10 years of service is 7,500 rupees. You literally will not receive less than this baseline amount.
However, we do have to look at the stark cutoff rule clearly written into the GR. If you retire with under 10 years of service, no pension is allowed under the specific revised scheme. None. It's a hard line drawn right at the decade mark, making those first 10 years of service absolutely crucial for unlocking these state benefits.
Section 3, Family Pension Benefits.
Now, financial security isn't just about you, the employee, right? It's also about protecting your dependents. And the calculation here is actually very straightforward. In the event of the employee's passing, the family pension is set at 60% of the main pension amount. And just like your primary pension, this 60% base is also eligible for the applicable Dearness Allowance. It provides a structured, ongoing safety net for your family when they need it most.
Section 4, Mandatory Fund Transfers.
Okay, pay super close attention here because to get these guaranteed state benefits, there is a catch. There are mandatory administrative steps you absolutely must comply with. The state doesn't just hand over the new pension without balancing the books first. And this brilliantly illustrates exactly how it works. Under the standard NPS, you'd normally get a 60% lump sum from the PFRDA when you retire. But under this revised scheme, Step 1 is receiving that lump sum, and Step 2 requires you to immediately deposit that entire 60% right back to your drawing and dispersing officer, or DDO. Then, in Step 3, the DDO pays those funds directly to the state government via a specific challan. Basically, you have to return that lump sum corpus to the state to fund your new guaranteed 50% pension.
And hey, remember that timeline from earlier? This mandatory fund return process applies retroactively. So, if you're an employee who already retired between March 1st, 2024 and the publication of this GR on May 6th, 2026, and you want to opt into this scheme, you are still required to follow this exact same process and return that 60% lump sum. No exceptions.
So what happens to the remaining 40% of your NPS corpus? Well, that 40% goes toward an annuity service provider to give you a regular annuity payout.
But here is the final piece of the math puzzle. You must provide your annuity details to the DDO. The DDO will then take the state's guaranteed 50% pension amount, deduct the annuity payout you're receiving from that provider, and the state will only pay you the balance. Basically, the state is essentially topping up your annuity to ensure you hit that promised 50% mark.
Section 5. Conditions and exceptions.
The government has also laid out some very strict rules, penalties for past actions, and clear clarifications on who this actually applies to. So the crucial point here is the 10% penalty. Listen up. During your service, if you made any prior partial withdrawals from your accumulated NPS funds, you cannot just ignore them. To get the full benefits of this revised scheme, you must return those previously withdrawn funds plus a 10% interest penalty. If you don't return those funds with the interest, your revised pension is going to be proportionately reduced.
It is also absolutely vital to understand how your exit from service impacts this whole thing. Standard retirement, like normal superannuation, makes you fully eligible for these new state guarantees. However, if you resign from government service, you entirely forfeit these new benefits. For resignations, only the standard central NPS rules apply to your accumulated funds.
All right, time for a bit of quick positive reassurance found in the document. The GR explicitly confirms that opting into this revised pension scheme does not cancel out your gratuity. Your standard retirement gratuity remains fully applicable exactly as it was governed by the earlier March 31st, 2023 government resolution. So, good news there.
And who exactly does this apply to beyond just direct state ministry employees? Well, the GR casts a pretty wide net. These exact same guidelines and options are extended to employees of Zilla Parishads, Panchayat Samitis, fully aided educational institutes, as well as both non-agri and agricultural universities affiliated with the state, provided, of course, they meet all the other conditions we've talked about.
Which brings us to the absolute most important question of this entire explainer. Have you submitted your option form to your department head yet? We started by highlighting that December 31st, 2026 deadline, and now you know exactly what's at stake. You've got a guaranteed 50% pension on the table, but it requires returning your 60% lump sum and meticulously following the DDO process. The clock is ticking to make your choice. So what are you going to do? Don't leave your retirement up to chance. Make sure you take action before that deadline hits.